All right, Brock, welcome to the ConquerCast. I am super excited for this. The ConquerCast is a podcast where we share ways in life that we are choosing to conquer, whether it's the mountains, it's achievements, it's things we're going after, and you're an individual that goes after life in a really incredible way. I've just been honored to have you as a friend and to learn from you, to watch all the things you're going after. And it's not just physical. There's definitely a spiritual element to you and to what you're doing, and a social element, bringing people together. And then your Neuromastery business is kind of combining all those, but there's an emotional and mental element. And you know your stuff, man. I remember you had me on your podcast, and I felt like, man, we just need to have him up to our podcast so that he can kind of share all this wisdom. And so I appreciate your friendship, appreciate the wisdom that you offer. You're getting out and helping me conquer more in life. And your wife, Kelsey, has been incredible as well behind the lens, and honestly, just making all of it come together so we can tell the story.
Yeah, no, we're excited to be here. This is an awesome opportunity, and I'm grateful to be here.
No, thanks for making time. And we've had a good morning this morning together. We've gotten out and conquered. We did a little workout. What was the workout that we just?
So they call it Cindy. Yeah, it's a 20-minute AMRAP. You do 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, 15 air squats, many times you can go.
In 20 minutes, and Brock did like 28 rounds.
So I started 28, didn't quite finish,
and I was probably half of that.
No, you're done.
It was hard to keep up, but I stopped counting where I was at because I just saw him lapping me so many times. But then we jumped in a cold plunge, and there's a lot I want to cover. There's a lot I want you to share. Our audience is always looking for ways to optimize their performance, maximize their performance in those realms of spiritual, physical, mental, social. And that's kind of how you and I connected. Like, why don't you share with people? Because we have this similar vision of how we want to work with people, how we are working with people. And it came together in a pretty unique way where we were able to connect and conquer with a lot of people this summer. So
yeah, well, it was amazing how, before I had met you, I had this vision of wanting to do like a speaking event as how it all started. And Kelsey had kind of talked to me, and she's like, Brock, you're supposed to help people. And so I was trying to figure out the best way to do that, right? And I started talking to some of my friends, and I met John Moore, and he's aligned with the Here Brotherhood, and he started talking to me, and we were like, let's do this event. And then all of a sudden we're like, speaking's just not up our alley. It's not what we do. We need it to be bigger, better, and more interactive.
Yeah.
And we go to this place where we were at Vessel Kitchen, okay? And he goes, hey, you need to talk to Trevor Farnes. He'd never met you before, but he goes, he needs to be a part of this, I can tell. We've talked on LinkedIn, but I think he should come. And then along with that, Ben Checketts, the owner of Roan. So Vessel Kitchen is where me and Ben connected for the very first time. And John said, hey, Ben needs to be a part of this. So I get in contact with Ben. I get on the phone with him, and he says, hey, you need to meet Trevor Farnes.
And I hadn't met him.
He hadn't met you yet. But for some reason, they're like, you need to get Trevor Farnes in on this. And then we get Sean Finnegan, and they're all, you need to get Trevor Farnes in on this when I start talking about it. And I was like, okay, I got to get Trevor Farnes in on that.
I'm so grateful that they would recommend me, because, I mean, it's been a blessing to my life to be a part of what you're doing. So
yeah, it was so cool. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to just DM him on Instagram and see how it goes. And then I got Trevor to come on my podcast, and I hear him start talking. And you start going through the 4 pillars, and my eyes just opened, and I'm like, this is everything that I'm trying to do. We aligned so much on every single level. It was incredible to see. And so then I was like, after the podcast, I go, Trevor, I know this might seem crazy, but we're doing this thing. We got this festival coming up, and I want you to be a part of it. And Trevor just said, yeah, I'm in. Let's do it.
Yeah. And I think you said, okay, so how much do you want to be in? Do you want to help us plan, or do you just want to show up? And I was like, I want to be there. I want to help you plan. Let's come together. And it was cool to then meet all those people that you brought together with Sean and Ben and John and Cam. And we had a little lunch together there down at your office. And that was where we were exploring, like, hey, what should the day look like? What should we call this? How do we get people excited beforehand? Kind of talk us through that process. Like, how did it all come together? And then and then once we do that, let's talk about the actual event. And did it come to pass the way that you hoped it would? Did it surpass? Did it underperform? Like, I want to know exactly like what you were feeling after that event took place.
Yeah, so when it was all coming, it's been a dream of mine for a while. Going back, like I can be stubborn sometimes. And I remember when I was in college, did 3 years of finance. And I didn't want to let that go because I just thought I needed to learn how to make money and that was what I needed to do in this life. But for some reason, I could never let go of the psychology classes. So I kept taking them. And I did 3 years of finance until Kelsey sat me down one day and she said, Brock, like, what are you doing? You need to be working with people. And so I dropped my 3 years of finance, went and got my degree in psychology, and I started building Neuromastery. And
Neuromastery is the business you've been building for how long now?
Yeah, so I've been building it for the past 2 years.
Okay.
And I work one-on-one with clients. I build workout programs, nutrition, and then we have a community where we put on events. And I just realized there's such a big gap in today's world. Like this personal development industry is like a broken mirror, right? Everybody's taking a piece of it and they say, this is the only piece that's going to solve all your problems. You got the, fitness guys that think if you just work out, you'll be fine. You got your therapist where you could stay there for 3-4 years talking about your problems, where talking about the problem actually becomes the problem. And then you have these guys who have made a lot of money that think they can solve everything all at once just by giving you some advice or public speaking and just talking. And I was like, it's broken, because what that does is no single one of those is going to fix everything. You need all of them.
Yeah.
And you also need the community. You need people, because where people come into play is one of the main neurochemicals in your brain is oxytocin. Oxytocin promotes pro-social behavior, trust, bonding, creative, like wanting to be with others, right? But another thing that a lot of people don't know is it increases your pain tolerance. And so if you can increase your pain tolerance by connecting with other people, then the opportunity to go out and take on challenges outside of that realm becomes a whole lot easier. So I wanted to create something that would be able to incorporate all of those aspects and give people the opportunity to experiment with that. Because I figured if they can try just one of these things and experience it for themselves, they'll actually know what health feels like. And when they can have that experience, then all of a sudden when they go home, they can take that to their family, to their kids, and it can spread a whole lot wider. And so that was my vision. And I was just trying to find the best way to bring that to pass.
Yeah. That's incredible. It makes me think of the community here at Mountain Ops and how important that is, that you don't go it alone, that when you're around other people, you're part of a community. I didn't know your pain tolerance goes up. Why does that happen? Just that oxytocin that's released, or are you just watching other people, their examples, you're energized by the community, or kind of all of the above? Or
well, kind of interesting enough. So here's a study that shows how this works a little bit. Okay, so what they did is they put someone in a chair and they were going to elicit a shock to the person. Okay, and what they did is they brought in different people, someone they knew, someone that was a stranger, and then by themselves. And then they were measuring the pain tolerance in the brain of how much they were able to take. Okay. First shock, he had the most amount of pain. He said it really hurt. And then they were also able to measure that inside the brain. Then they brought in a stranger that was a little bit closer to them.
So he was by himself the first time?
Yeah, by himself the first time. Second time they brought in a stranger, gave him a shock, didn't feel it as much, not as much pain was registered. Then they brought in a loved one who held his hand. And all of a sudden, it was nowhere near what the first one was.
Wow. And
this is trackable because your body responds to people. We have been built to work in communities, to work with other people, to have that support. And that's why it's necessary. But so often, the thing that our brain wants the least is trust. Because trust equals vulnerability. I have to be vulnerable in order to trust you, that you're going to have my back, that you're going to be there for me when nothing goes wrong. And so when everything goes wrong. So when you give trust, that's something that your brain wants to avoid. And so a lot of times that's why we close up. That's why we distance, right? Like when we have a scary event, your brain all of a sudden goes into this search engine where it says, okay, well, where was I safe? Well, my house, my bed, by myself. Nobody was there, could do anything to me. That's where I want to go. And when we do that, though, one of the number one increasers of anxiety, depression, and stress and overwhelm is isolation. And so it does the exact opposite of what we want to. And in today's world, we're fairly safe. And so when we can go towards people and trust, and we can start to build those bonds, that oxytocin then is able to take place and build those connections in our brain to where when we're not necessarily with people and we're taking on challenges, we have that ability to do it.
That's awesome. That's powerful, man. So if there's somebody listening that's struggling to trust or to be vulnerable to build that trust, like how do you coach somebody through that? Like what are some steps that they can take? Because it sounds like it's trusting people, trusting the process. And sometimes people have had experiences. I myself have had experience with people where it's like, do I, how do I trust this next individual? Will the same thing happen? And PTSD kind of, exists, but maybe that's just a fear. Maybe that's just a resistance. Maybe that's an adversarial effect on a spiritual level, even like, so what does somebody have to do to take some action and take some steps? What do you coach people?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, one of the first baselines, like a definition that you have to set before you go into this realm is like the fear is real. Whatever's real as you is your perception. Yeah. Your perception is reality. A lot of times we think just because it's in your head, right, that it's not real, but it's your experience. So it is real. Yeah. And you have to treat it as such. But where you start, if I'm working with a client and they're sitting there and they're struggling wanting to trust people, start small, work big. You don't want to go to the person who's your biggest trigger or the thing that's your biggest trigger and throw yourself into the deep end of the pool. You're going to end up just more traumatized than you were in the first place, right? But to a certain extent, you have to, like, the only way to overcome fear is to go through it. Yeah. So one way or another, you got to start somewhere. Yep. And typically where I do it is like, I don't know, just going back to a story of my life, this may be an easier way to teach the principle.
Good.
So I loved football. I was obsessive about it. I gave all of myself to it. I woke up every day. I caught 100 passes, went to school, worked out till about 6, went home, went to bed, did it again every day. That's where my friends were. That's where what my passion was. That was my identity. Okay. In that, I received about 10 plus concussions by my junior year. Okay. Went to the doctors because I was having a lot of issues, bloody nose. I was passing out and I had a lot of stuff going on. And the doctor said, "Hey, Brock, you cannot play football anymore." So from one day to the next, there was something that my whole life revolved around that was now gone. Okay, so I was sitting there, I went feeling bad for myself, laying on the ground at home, and I started to isolate, and I didn't really want to go out because I was like, what is there? And so one night I was laying on the ground and feeling bad for myself, and I realized that nobody was going to come and save me, that I had to save myself, and I had to get myself into a place to where I could be okay, that my identity didn't revolve around this sport. And so what I did is I sat down and I made a list, and I started to write down everything that I liked about the world, because I figured in that moment I felt very fragile and weak. I felt like I was very vulnerable, and I didn't like that. And
this is you as a teenager.
Yeah.
Did you have coaching to do that, or is this just like, okay, this is what I'm going to do? I'm going to get a piece of paper out and I'm going to write down.
Yeah, this was just me.
Kind of some mature thinking at that age.
It was the best I could come up with because I felt fragile and I wanted to feel strong.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I was like, in order to feel strong, I need to get to know myself. So I wrote down everything that I liked about the world. Everything from apples to oranges to experiences that I loved. I loved being around kind people, to who I liked being around. And then I made another list of everything that I didn't like. And I said, if I'm going to be strong, I got to face these. And so some of them were a lot heavier than others. And so I started small, worked big. I picked things that were still scary that I didn't like. Like, for example, a big one at the time was sarcasm. Hated sarcasm because I felt like it was just a way for people to be mean without having to be direct.
Yeah, I've felt that same way at times, yeah.
And so I would put myself around sarcastic people, and when I started to get annoyed and I got that scratching inside of me and I wanted to I felt uncomfortable, I started to breathe and I was like, okay, I'm going to be strong here. And if I need to say something, I will. And I started to kind of try to grow strength in those moments. And that was the best way that I could think of how I was going to grow strong. And that then has translated into a lot of other aspects of my life. And I still reiterate that list every year. But that's the best way that I know how.
Okay. That's amazing. So get out the piece of paper, get out the Conquer Nandy journal and write down all these things. The world is beautiful around you. I love, there's a scripture, I am come that they might have life and they might have it more abundantly. There's an abundance of life, but you at that young age choosing to do those things, that's a way to find an abundant life, but it's pretty mature at that age, especially because I know a lot of adults wouldn't think to do that, to take time to really consider the world around them and all the beautiful things that exist that we should focus on, or the things that like this stuff scares me and I need to confront them. I need to be exposed to them even more because they scare me. We've done it in hunting with my family. I'm scared to death of bears. You've heard me tell my tree stand story, and it's just one of those things. But the first hunt that I chose to take my 10 and 12-year-old daughters on was a bear hunt, and it was intentional that way because I wanted to confront that fear. I had a fear of flying for a long time, to where I'd turn around and go away. I honestly at times thought maybe this was like a spiritual prompting that I shouldn't get on that plane or this or that. And I confused the two. I confused fear with the spirit. So how do you do that with people too? Where it's like, maybe there's a lot of people that are spiritually in tune and they feel promptings and they this or that. But I think fear and that can be confusing at times. Am I feeling like I shouldn't do this, or because I'm just scared, or should I really not be doing this? Is it just you got to take a step into it and see what the difference is, or
not necessarily? I think what you're alluding to, and I love this question. So let me ask you a question, okay? What are the similarities between fear and faith?
Faith as far as an action, or just faith like? Here's what
I believe, okay? Fear and faith, they're very similar in the aspect that they're both made up. Neither one is more real than the other.
Can they? I've always heard though that they can't coexist.
Exactly. When you're looking at them on an emotional level, they cannot exist at the same time, and this is why.
Okay.
Fear is chaos.
Okay.
Fear has no plan. Fear is just completely reactive and emotional. You're in an emotional part of the brain, and you're just trying to get through. It's to get from point A to point B as quickly as you can. Faith at least has a plan. It's not more real than the fear that you're feeling. They both are something that you have in a moment where you don't have anything, but faith at least has a plan that this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to try. And that willingness to be able to walk into that unknown is what makes the difference. And so where you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, well, I'm this person and I don't know what's the difference between fear and faith. Okay, well, am I reactive? Do I feel like I'm spreading so thin that I'm not in the places where I want to be? Am I aligned with the decisions that I'm making? And if the answer to those are no, then you're probably in a fearful state. And a lot of people can live there the whole life. Yeah. They just keep adding things onto their plate, trying to think that they're solving problems, but really they're just putting out fires for every single day. Yeah. You know, you take the parable of the man who built his house upon the brick, and you take the parable of who built his house upon the sand, right? Yeah. The person who built his house upon the sand, all he did was hurry and try to throw something together as quickly as he could. The water came and washed it away, and he did it again and again and again, and he stayed stuck there. The person who lays his house with faith, it says, okay, I'm going to do this one thing, and I'm just going to do it as best I can. And if you really want to be effective at it, pick one thing and say, I'm going to lay this brick perfectly, and it's all I'm going to focus on. And then once I get that brick the way that I want it to be, I'm going to lay another one, and another one, and another one, until you have a wall. And then when the water comes, even if it cracks the brick, you're not going to sit there and blame the water for breaking your house. You're not going to blame anything because there's a crack in the brick. You're going to say, well, why didn't the brick hold up? What part of me wasn't strong enough to handle this situation? Rather than blaming the person for being rude, rather than saying that, well, they hurt me, they did this, I wasn't able to handle it, you start to be able to look inward and say, why didn't I hold up in that? What part of me feels unwhole? Where's the insecurity? And when you look inward, then you can grow the strength to handle whatever comes your way. And it doesn't matter if you're in the perfect situation or not. Like, so many people wait till things are perfect in order to be able to make a choice. But when we do that, we wait our whole life and we continue to build houses on sand.
That's powerful, man. That's really cool. Yeah, and what I've found too, that as I've just stepped into that faith and taken action, I've found that the fears were keeping me from living, you know? And so overcoming those by choosing faith, being intentional, mapping my own course. And it takes time, but even that first step felt like I'm okay. Things are good. Life is abundant, you know, and it started to build upon itself to where that wall is there. Yeah. And then you're just refining that wall over time. You are finding the cracks and you're finding the imperfections, and the wall is never going to be perfect, right? And I think that some people do focus on the perfection of it, but it's progress over perfection every day of the week. It's how our life should be built. No, that's really awesome, man. When so you're giving us some really good words of wisdom. Like how you do this with your clients one-on-one, but then you also do these retreats, and then you wanted to create a festival. Was it with the intention of applying these principles to individuals just kind of on a bigger scale, or what was the vision there?
Well, my mission in this life is to help people regain the energy to engage with life. Because when you're in a fearful state, you lose your freedom. Like, think about it. If you're so angry, because typically anger comes from a place of fear, you say things you don't mean, right? Yeah. Things happen that you didn't want to. If you're overweight and you're not taking care of yourself, if you need to run, do you have that ability? It's gone.
Yeah.
And so I want people to be able to regain the energy to engage with life to where they have the freedom to be and do whatever they want, whenever they want to. They have that ability. And so I wanted to expose them to that.
Did this mission come by way of experience personally for you? Like, I know you had that experience with football. Were there other things where it's like, hey, I don't have the energy to engage in life? I am recognizing, like, you know, where I'm at right now is not where I want to be. Was there a personal experience or a multiple, you know, experiences that came about in your life that was like, this is why I'm doing this. I understand what it feels like to not be engaged in life, to not have the energy to engage.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. My path is a little bit different than I think most. There wasn't like one particular time where I struggled really, really bad. My whole thing is I grew up with 4 older brothers, and my whole mission in life was to be able to keep up and fit in and do. And so where I struggled is I was always acting from a place for other people. And I had a fairly positive mindset my entire life, but that led me astray. That positive mindset put me in a place to where I overlooked a lot of the hardships of life that could have helped me grow, because I stayed there for so long. And I would do it at the detriment of my own self. Like, for example, okay, my brothers rode motorcycles. I loved motorcycles, but they rode way more than I did. I only went when the family went. But if I saw my brothers hit a jump, I was going to hit that jump, even on my smaller bike. But what would happen, I'd often crash. Yeah. And then same thing with football. My brother started in football, so I was going to start in football, even to the point to where I was going to put myself in the game.
Yeah, I love this story. You got to share it.
Yeah, like there was multiple times my coach said, he goes, our starters will put themselves in the game. And like, I wasn't very good. I was not a starter by any means, but I put myself in the game.
I'm just picturing Rudy Rudiger out there right now, right? Like, what are you, like, Brock, what are you doing out there? Is that like...
Yes, and my coach got so mad. Like, he comes over...
Because you would just go out. You'd go out for the starting lineup.
Yeah, and so he comes back one time, and he just gets in my face, and he's like, Brock, what string are you? I look him in the eyes, I'm like, 4th? 3rd? 4th? He's like, do you ever want to play? And I got really sad. And I was like, yeah, I want to play. And I got in my head, I'm like, stupid Brock, like, why can't you just sit still? Like, why can't you play the game good? And I started to be really hard on me there. And I did that throughout a lot of times in my life where I wanted things to happen, but they didn't. And I didn't know why, because hard work was never a part of the equation. I could work hard. I could do the thing. I would check the list. But the thing is I was doing the wrong thing at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I was a tryhard trying to do everything for everybody else the way they thought it was right. And one thing that I learned along the way, and this is where the lesson comes in for me, was when I realized that I was the one who had to show up for me. Let's go through college and everything like that. I started to realize that, like, I was the one who put my running shoes on every day and showed up for myself. I was the one who went to the gym. I was the one who did that, and that has now led to me being able and having the capability to have run marathons, do 100-mile races, train for this Ironman, and have that confidence. But that was a really hard thing. And the very things that I despised about myself, that I thought were unworthy or unlovable or weak, are the very things that have created so much change in today's world. The person who's willing to do what other people aren't, to be able to have a crazy idea to do a festival the way it hasn't really been done before, and to do so many activities in a day. Like, that was very scary for me to go off on my own and do that. But it was the very same part of me that put me in the game.
Yeah.
The very things that I deemed as unlovable are the very traits that I have now been able to amplify and learn from and grow from, and have made me into who I am today.
It's awesome. It's really cool. Let's talk about the event a little bit because, you worked your tail off to get people there. And it's not easy. Like we've run events here at Mountain Ops. I've put on some that I've led here at Mountain Ops, and it's just a grind. And you want people to be there. You want them to experience what you've put together and the power of it. And, you've had events and you've had personal coaching that you've been giving to people. And then it's like bringing this all into one big day, big festival. What was the experience? What was the highlights? If those that are listening, this will be an annual thing. So pay attention to when it's coming up. I think we had the right amount of people there. And so you're going to want to sign up quickly. The speakers were amazing, all this. Like, what were the highlights from you? And did you achieve the vision that you had kind of set out?
I mean, honestly, the highlight for me was connecting with you guys, like on a personal level. I got to get really close and learn from you guys, Trevor and, John and Sean, and create those relationships and meet so many cool people along the way that just being able to be close and learn from the standard that you guys hold and how you live your life has been impactful to me. My main thing is I just want to learn as much as I can. And for on a selfish level, that was my highlight.
Oh.
It was also incredible to see the changes that everybody was able to have there, because there was so many things that they were able to experience and to hear their feedback. And it was wild. The number one piece of feedback that I got, which was not expected, was that because of that festival, they wanted to be closer to God. And he wasn't even spoken of there, which was the most wild part, is it was just an underlying tone that when you feel this way, you are closer to God. As you experience these principles of health and you really get to know them on a physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental way, you are closer to God. And it was wild for me to have that experience. And it wasn't just one person who said that to me. Yeah. It was multiple. And so just by that being able to be an underlying tone was something that really filled me too.
That was amazing. We started the day, just so everyone kind of put a picture in their head. Brock rented this equestrian center, like this big field where the field was ours. It was empty. It was awesome. Out at this, an equestrian park, right, in South Jordan, Utah. We went and set up the day before for the Operation Conquer Hunger event, because the day was split up into the spiritual, the physical, the mental, the social. We packed 35,000 meals, I believe, for with Operation Conquer Hunger, and that was a heavy part of Mountain Ops' involvement in it. And then we went into a workout with Eric McCormick, which this community that's listening right now, you know Eric McCormick. A lot of the guys there at this event started calling him the drill sergeant or something like that.
Yeah, because he was just yelling in their
face. Getting in the face. And it was awesome. We had, 100
we probably had 100, yeah.
At least 100 people there. We had some people that just came, like with families and such, for the Conquer Hunger portion, and then the men stayed. And this was a men's wellness festival. And then Eric's workout always just is brutal.
Oh yeah. I had my brother-in-law came, and he was like, "That's the hardest workout I've done," and he was just laying there sick. It was awesome.
Yeah. Eric actually put me through that same workout individually, just on my own, the day before. So I was already sore from that, and then to do it again, but it was better doing it with other people, and there were some people that just we were all on different levels.
Yeah.
And so it was cool to watch those that would kind of, on the little run that we went, there were some that stayed with another, and they were checking on each other. Amazing, like sauna and cold plunge experience with a sauna village.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that was amazing, just to experience the contrast between heat and cold, and to be there doing that with so many people. I think how many saunas did you have?
We had 4.
And they each fit like 15 to 20 people, and they're pulled by trailers. It was
a legit sauna village.
Yeah, with 3 cold plunges, or was it 2?
Yeah, 3 big pools of cold plunges.
Yeah, those fit. I think I got into one, and there was like 10 guys in there with me, but it was freezing cold. And doing the sauna, and I can sauna a hot tub. They're my favorite. They're my best sports. I can sit in those for a while. But and then we moved into a breath work and meditation with Mike and John, and that was powerful. I missed the first part of their instructions, so I told Mike after, like, I have to come to another event, because when he was saying stuff, there was things that people were supposed to do, and I wasn't there, so I didn't know. I was looking around trying to catch on to what was going on. But people were having a spiritual experience during that as well, you know?
Oh, that was incredible.
Yeah.
So many people were like, you just sit here, these grown men crying.
Yeah.
And if you've never done like holotropic breath work, it's not this relaxing experience.
No,
Like, it is
you can
work.
hear the work from people as they're breathing, and that's maybe where I didn't get the instruction. So I actually I don't nap. I can't nap. You can ask my wife. I try to. Sunday afternoons, the whole family, and I fell asleep during it, and maybe that's what I needed at the
Yeah.
time. Like, I was breathing, I was trying to follow the instructions, and boom, I'm out. And I remember waking up just so refreshed. And I was like, this was nice. I don't nap, and I'm laying here on the ground, and
That's awesome.
but yeah, people had an amazing experience. And then you
That-
had, well, go ahead.
Well, I was just like, then you got me over there, and I just got this tetany in my, like, tetany's where your hands cramp up and
did
your
you?
body just like flinches, because I was doing the breath work harder than I'd ever done it. I was just trying to go deep, and I was
Wow.
like, I'm going to make the most of this. And like my legs and my abs were like coming up, and my whole body was just
Wow.
clenched. And
I didn't know that.
oh, it was intense for me on that one.
Wow.
Trevor's back there getting a nice nap, and I'm just
And I had Chad Hymas next to me, and I was chatting with him for a second, and then and he was kind of monitoring that. Chad Hymas is a mutual friend of ours, and he was one of the speakers going into like the mental portion of it. Tell us about you had 3 speakers there that were just amazing and incredible.
Yeah, so we had Bronson Kafusi, Corey Stevens, and Chad Hymas each there speaking, and each of them had a very different outlook.
Yeah.
You know, Bronson Kafusi played in the NFL, and he talked about how his dad had come over and provided these opportunities for him and changed his life, and how he could, see through the difficulties of life and how he was able to overcome there. And I thought that was really cool. And then you had Corey Stevens, who had all these mental health struggles,
Yep.
struggled with depression and anxiety and the loss of a son.
Yep.
And really got vulnerable with us. And then he talked about the things that pulled him out.
Yeah.
Sleep and exercise and nutrition.
Nutrition.
And it's always the simplest things that make the biggest difference. And then you had Chad Hymas, who just came in. And if you've never heard Chad Hymas speak, you need to. He just cuts an onion right in half. He does not peel back the layers. Like, the first thing he did was get rid of any excuse as to why you could feel bad for yourself in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And he can do that rolling in on his wheelchair. The accident that he's had in his life was, a man that could have every excuse to just not do certain things.
Yeah.
And he travels the world speaking and motivating. What he hoped would be this ranch and this farm that he would have has now become, the world is his ranch and his farm, and he's raising people.
Right.
He's pulling them out of their excuse mentality, their victim mentality, and moving them to this victor,
Right. When he did such a good job, when he moved into it, he just started to work on you with the families, and he started to work on you as a human and what you could grow, and it was so cool.
There was one individual there who he said, how many of you something like have a beautiful wife at home? And the hand goes up, and he picks one guy, and he's like, bring me your phone.
Yeah.
And he's like, we're going to send a text to your wife right now. So he kind of scripted this text and said, and then with these emojis and stuff, and he's like, you typically don't do this, right? And it was this text where it's like, hey, honey, I'm recognizing some things here that I need to do better. I need to improve upon. I just want to let you know that I'm in it, and I'm here for you, and I'm going to do better as a husband, and this and that. And then he's like, do you ever use emojis? He's like, no, it's some hearts, some flowers, some kissy faces, and had him send that off. And then he's like, I'm going to keep your phone. We're going to wait for a response. What do you remember what the wife said?
Yeah, she goes, this isn't you.
Yeah, this doesn't sound like you.
Yeah. And then he goes and he's like, well, it should.
It should sound like you. I mean, for me, one of the major takeaways from the speakers, not that there was a VIP event with a few speakers the night before, and one of the speakers there was Jason Van Camp.
Yeah.
And he talked about a friend of his who went through some issues with a marriage and such, and then what Chad kind of enforced, and then the relationship build that Bronson and Corey had talked about, and life and relationships that matter most. I walked away with, what are the desires that my wife has in life, and what are the desires that Hallie, Kenzie, Beckham, Savvy, and how am I understanding those, uncovering those, and how am I fueling those? Like,
Yeah.
I so often, I look at my life and I'm learning these things, and we should be doing these things, and I just put that on them. Like,
Right.
here's what we should do. Here's what I've done. Here's what I just learned. Blah, blah, blah. And that's all good, but does it align with where they want to go in life, their passion, their dreams, their desires. And that's what I came away. Like, so much of what I've been trying to do is like, it sometimes revolves around me, and this is what I hope to do next. And
Right.
they're going to come along for the ride. I even expressed that to a brother once, not too long ago, where I was like, hey, here's some things I want, and here's some things that I think it'll benefit my kids and this and that. And my brother's response was, just remember, they're God's kids first.
Mm.
And so I was like, okay, yeah, I might want these things. And it might align with God, but what if it doesn't? What if that's not what they should be doing? What if this is the path they need to go on, the talents and abilities and the gifts they were given that I need to reinforce and help build? And so it's important as we look around and those around us that we're helping, if they're in the walls of our own home or they're a friend, like, hey, they're God's child first before they are like a friend to me or a daughter or a son or whatnot to me or my wife, And so the more we can uncover what people should be doing in life and their gifts and their talents, that's what I feel like you've actually as a friend have helped me with, where it's like, I don't understand myself all the time. And like, I know some gifts that I have, but I think you have an ability to see it in people and to see potential and to like point it out. And so you've brought some things up to me. I'm like, I just don't like that. That feels good. I appreciate it, but I don't get it. Like, I don't understand why that would,
Yeah.
that would work that way. And you've been once like, well, this is why, and let's augment this. Let's enhance it. Let's go with it, And so it's good to have friends that are interested in the desires of others, because so much of this world is like competing in a different way. And they're like, I don't want that guy to do well because it makes me not look as good, or this or that.
Yeah.
I don't see that in you. I see you like with your team, with this festival, the things that we were able to do together. Like your mission is to
It's just help people regain the energy to engage with life.
And there's nothing selfless or selfish about that. It's selfless. You're like helping people find that energy. And in my opinion, you find that energy when you prioritize who you are and the connections that connect and conquer most. And you draw those gifts out of people. And they're like, wow, I want to engage in life because Brock's helping me understand where I do have this gift and this energy to do life in a more abundant way.
Yeah.
So you're doing great things, man.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate that because it's powerful what you're saying. And I hope people take that to heart, because it is. It's so easy, especially as men, to want to just take the weight of the world on your shoulders and think that you need to be by yourself, you need to handle your problems by yourself, and that you need to do that. But that leads you to isolation, which causes more stress, more anxiety. And then we get that, and then we think, oh, I still got to handle this all by myself. And I do this workshop sometimes when I'm working with groups, and I'll have someone hold a cup of water out in front. And I'm like, how much does the cup weigh? And they'll be like, well, maybe 12 ounces, right? And I go, no. It depends on how long you hold it for.
Mm.
And so you take a man and you tell him he needs to hold all this weight, and it continues to add up, and he's going down these paths that just limit his freedom, limit his opportunities, and what his capabilities are, because he's so isolated and stuck in his own world that he can't see outside of it, that we end up in this never-ending loop of just trying to get by. I just need to get to the weekend. I just need to get through this month. If I can just make this much money, then I'll be okay. If I can just get here, right, then I'll be fine. And the problem is those are all houses on sand. Where we find a sure foundation and where we can really start to grow is through connection. And that's where you can start to open up, because if you go to the Connect and Conquer event and you didn't open up and you were around all those people, you would have stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
Because it just naturally, men need it. Women do too. We all need that opportunity to be able to get outside of our own self, try things we've never done, and open up about things that we need to talk about. Because what you do is, imagine inside of you there's this thermostat and you're just gaining steam. It gets hotter and hotter and hotter. And all you're doing is you're not letting any of the steam out, so you're just going to bust.
Yeah.
Pressure can either burst a pipe or make diamonds. And so the community is what helps release enough of that pressure to where you can build and construct and actually start to take a creator standpoint rather than just a reactive victim standpoint.
Mm. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you need to come to the next Connect and Conquer event. You need to meet Brock. You need to follow him online. You need to learn from him because I'm a sponge here. We should do a few more segments on this with you because you've got so many incredible insights, and you're helping so many people. Bringing it back to connection, just to kind of wrap things up here. I typically ask people at the end of this podcast, like, have you read the book by Clayton Christensen, How You Measure Your Life? Okay, read that book. You'll love it. A lot of it's about connection and investment in connections that matter most. So I'll typically ask people, hey, in the end, how will you measure your life? I'm going to ask you a little bit different question, and you can answer that one too if you want. But like, in the end, what is the connection that matters or that will matter most for you when all is said and done?
The connection that will matter most is my connection with God. He encompasses everything that I do. And if I can connect with him, I know everything will be okay. A lot of what I do, I'm very afraid of. And I feel that in my bones every day. I'm uncomfortable a lot. But I know as long as I'm serving him and I have that connection there, everything will be okay. Second comes myself, then comes my family, then comes my job, and to everybody else.
Awesome. That's powerful. You're a man of faith, and I would never know that there's those fears inside as you're conquering life. You're definitely conquering those fears with faith and a connection with God, higher power that's giving you strength to overcome. And you're doing it in an amazing and graceful way. Like I would have never known that you're the type that are facing those types of fears every day. And I appreciate you sharing that, because then I think that gives people an understanding that, hey, they're not alone in those same fears that they're facing each day. But there are connections that can help us conquer more in life.
Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of life.
Yeah.
Where you can really, like, one thing that I believe, just to end the podcast, and I think that going off what you're saying, all emotions are beautiful, and I want them all. I want fear. I want pain. I want failure. I want excitement. I want happiness. Whatever is going to help me become the person that I need to become, I want it all. Whatever it is, I don't care. I've lost that need for what I feel like is this relief from life. Because the more I seek relief from life, the more I eliminate myself from it. If I want to regain the energy to engage with life, I want to immerse myself into everything it has to offer, not just the things that I deem as good, because that's just a label that leads me astray, takes me away from God, takes me away from people, takes me away from the things that I matter most. I want all of it, because all of it is a blessing in some way, shape, or form, and I know if we can put ourselves into those areas, we can learn to conquer.
Awesome. Thanks, Brock. Everyone, go follow Brock Painter and Neuromastery. Incredible work you're doing, and I can't wait to have you on again to gain more insights and wisdom from you. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.